I never thought my peaceful life in Oak Estates would turn into a battleground, but that was before I met Karen Wilcox, the self-proclaimed queen of our homeowners association. When I purchased my dream home last spring, a charming craftsman with a beautiful yard on a half-acre lot, I was focused on the natural spring well that provided the property with the most delicious water I'd ever tasted. What I failed to consider was the iron grip Karen had on our neighborhood. The first encounter happened just 3 weeks after moving in. I was installing a small garden shed when a silver Mercedes pulled into my driveway. A woman with an immaculate blonde bob and designer sunglasses approached, a clipboard clutched to her chest. "Excuse me, I'm Karen Wilcox, HOA president," she announced with a tight smile that didn't reach her eyes. "That shed wasn't approved by the architectural committee. You'll need to take it down immediately." I wiped my brow and tried to be reasonable. "Hi, Karen, I'm James. I actually submitted the paperwork last week. The shed matches all the guidelines, right size, color, everything." Her smile vanished. "Well, I don't recall approving it, and as committee chair, nothing gets built without my personal sign-off. You'll receive a formal violation notice tomorrow. Each day of non-compliance is a $50 fine." That was my introduction to Karen's management style. What followed were 6 months of nitpicky violations: grass half an inch too tall, trash cans visible from the street for more than 12 hours, unauthorized wind chimes. Apparently, wind chimes required a noise permit. Each complaint came with Karen's personal inspection and barely concealed satisfaction. The real trouble began when I decided to landscape around my well. The previous owners had left it rather exposed, and I wanted something more aesthetically pleasing while maintaining easy access for maintenance. I submitted detailed plans to the HOA, triple-checked against every bylaw. 3 weeks later, I received approval, surprisingly without Karen's signature. That should have been my first warning. I hired professionals, and the work was completed within days: a beautiful stone enclosure with flowering native plants that actually improved the property's curb appeal. I was admiring their handiwork when Karen's Mercedes screeched to a halt in front of my house. "What do you think you're doing?" she demanded, marching onto my property with a thunderous expression. This monstrosity was never approved. I calmly pulled out my approval paperwork. "Actually, it was signed by Vice President Richards while you were on vacation. Everything's in order." Karen's face flushed crimson. "Richards had no authority. I review all water feature modifications personally. This is a direct violation of Section 12, Paragraph 4. Tear it all out by tomorrow, or I'll bring this to the full board." "It's not a water feature, Karen, it's a well enclosure, and it's already approved," I explained, maintaining my composure despite her increasingly shrill tone. "The well was here before the HOA even existed. It's grandfathered in." "We'll see about that," she hissed before storming back to her car. Some people just don't understand community standards. The next week brought an emergency HOA meeting, where Karen attempted to retroactively deny my approval. Thankfully, several board members stood their ground, pointing out that the approval was valid regardless of who signed it. I thought the matter was settled, but Karen's tight-lipped smile as the meeting adjourned told me this wasn't over. A few days later, I noticed something odd about my well water, a faint chemical smell I couldn't quite place. As a precaution, I had it tested. The results showed traces of herbicide, specifically the kind used for lawn treatment. Concerned, I installed a security camera facing the well. 2 nights later, the camera caught Karen approaching my well after midnight, a garden sprayer in hand. The footage clearly showed her removing the well cap and spraying something inside before carefully replacing it. I was stunned. This went beyond petty HOA tyranny; she was contaminating my drinking water. I contacted the police immediately but also reached out to the Environmental Protection Agency, as tampering with a water source could potentially be considered an environmental crime. The responding officer viewed the footage and took samples of my well water for testing. They advised me not to confront Karen until they had completed their investigation. For the next week, I used bottled water while the authorities built their case. The EPA expedited the water analysis, which confirmed dangerous levels of chemicals that matched the commercial-grade herbicide found in Karen's garage during their investigation. What she didn't realize was that my well connected to a small aquifer that served several properties in the area, turning her vendetta against me into a public health issue affecting multiple families. The morning of Karen's arrest was something I'll never forget. I was working from home when multiple police cars and an EPA vehicle pulled up to Karen's immaculate colonial house. From my window, I watched as she answered the door in her designer workout clothes, her expression shifting from annoyance to disbelief as an officer explained why they were there. "This is ridiculous. I'm the HOA president," she shouted, loud enough for the whole neighborhood to hear. "Do you know who my husband is? He's a corporate attorney." That didn't stop the officers from handcuffing her and reading her rights as stunned neighbors emerged from their homes to witness the spectacle. Karen locked eyes with me as they escorted her to the police car, her face contorted with rage. "This is your fault," she screamed across the street. "I was protecting our property values from your eyesore." The charges were serious: criminal contamination of a water supply, trespassing, property damage, and reckless endangerment. Because the contamination affected multiple households and posed a public health risk, state environmental protection statutes elevated the charges significantly. What Karen had dismissed as neighborhood politics had become a felony environmental crime. At her arraignment, Karen's usual confidence crumbled as the judge denied bail due to the calculated and repeated nature of her actions, classifying her as a risk to public safety. Her husband, the supposedly influential attorney, sat ashen-faced as the prosecutor detailed how she had purchased the industrial herbicide using their joint credit card and researched untraceable poisons on her home computer. The emergency HOA meeting that followed was unlike any other. The boardroom was packed with angry residents, many of whom had relied on the same aquifer for their water. Karen's vice president, now acting president, opened with an apology to the community and a motion to immediately remove Karen from the board. The vote was unanimous, with several members adding that they'd endured years of Karen's increasingly erratic enforcement of rules. The most satisfying moment came during the announcement of the financial impact. Not only would Karen personally face up to 12 years in prison if convicted, but she and her husband were already facing a civil lawsuit from affected homeowners totaling over $2 million. The HOA insurance wouldn't cover her actions since they were criminal, meaning the power-hungry president who would fine me for wind chimes was now facing financial ruin. As the meeting concluded, Karen's husband approached me with the desperate look of a drowning man. "Please," he whispered, his voice breaking, "if you drop the charges, we'll pay for all damages and leave the neighborhood. She's not well. She just got carried away with the HOA authority." I simply handed him my lawyer's business card. "Environmental terrorism isn't getting carried away," I replied calmly. "It's a serious crime with serious consequences. Your wife poisoned children's drinking water because she didn't like my landscaping. The prosecutor has my full cooperation." His face fell as the reality sank in: there would be no easy escape from this, no privileged workaround. As he walked away, shoulders slumped in defeat, I heard him mumble something about having to sell their house to pay for her legal defense. For someone who had weaponized property values against her neighbors for years, I couldn't imagine a more fitting consequence.